Today we can discuss about the features of database system, applications of database system and the DBMS users. Three topics are very important. Then first one, features of database system. What are all the features of database system? Features are centralized data management, controlled data redundancy, enforcing data integrity, data sharing, data security, multiple user interface, backup and recovery. And the first one, centralized data management. In the database system, the data is stored in a central location. Okay, the data is stored in central location and different users are sharing that data. So the data management will be easy. That is the centralized data management. Data is stored in a central location. So this data management will be easy. Then the second one, controlled data redundancy. What's the meaning of redundancy? Redundancy means repetition. Suppose this data needs to be used by 100 users or 1000 users. The data is stored in a central location and that data is shared by the multiple users. So it is not required to store the data in each and every system. So repetition of the data we can avoid. We can control the repetition. That is controlled data redundancy. Redundancy means repetition. Because of this centralized management, centralized data storage, we can avoid the repetition of the data. Third one, enforcing data integrity. Enforcing data integrity. Integrity means validity of the data. We can enforce, we can make sure the validity of the data in this database. In database, we can give different constraints. Primary key constraint, check constraints and all. That is, suppose we need to enter the age. Then age will not be a negative number. Okay. Then we can give that check constraint in that database. That age should not be less than 0, less than or equal to 0. Like that we can give different constraints. We can give that is we can make sure the validity of the data. That is the meaning of the integrity. Then fourth one, data sharing. That is the data storing is sharing by multiple users in the database. That is data sharing. Different users are sharing the data. Then data security. Since the data is stored centrally, enforcing security constraint is easy. Then in this RDBMS provides different security tools such as we can give the password and username and password for this RDBMS. Like that we can give different security tools. Like we can make sure the security of the data. Then the sixth one, multiple user interface. That is multiple user interface means we can query the data and we can use the graphical user interface and the application program interface. Like that we can different types of interface we can use. Query or a graphical user interface. There's different types of user interface we can use in this database. Then the seventh one, backup and recovery. This DBMS provides backup and recovery subsystem. That backup and recovery subsystem is responsible for the recovery from the hardware or software failure. That is, sometimes hardware failure will be there or software failure will be there. Then our data will be safe. In that we can give the backup using this backup in this database. These are the main features of database system. That is, first one, centralized data management. Centralized data management means the data is storing in a central location. So the data management of the data is easier. Then the second one, controlled data redundancy. Redundancy means the repetition. Because of this, data is storing in one central location and is shared by different users. It is not required to store the data in each and every system. So we can avoid that repetition of the data, or we can control the redundancy of the data. Then third one, data integrity means we can make sure the validity of the data. Then data sharing. Data can be shared by multiple users, and we can give the security tools such as password and username. Different user interface also there, graphical user interface and query user interface, querying language. Then backup and recovery subsystem is responsible for this hardware and software failure. And backup recovery system is responsible for the recovery of the data because of the hardware and software failure. These are the features of database system. Next, we can consider the application of database. Applications of database. First one, that is, what is the meaning of application? Where can we use this database? Then the first one, you can write anything. You can write in your own words. Where is the data? Wherever we are using this software and all, we need this database for storing the data. Then what is the use of database in banking? For storing the customer information, for making the accounts, transactions, for everything we need this database. Then in rail and airlines, for reservation or for booking tickets or everything, for storing the details of the traveling, everything we need this database. In colleges, what is the use of the database in college? For storing the information of the students, for storing for registration, for calculating the progress reports. For everything we need this database. Then in telecommunication, what's the use of the database in telecommunication? For keeping the records of calls or generating the monthly bills, etc. Then finance. In finance also we need this database for storing the information of storing and for sales and purchase of stock and bonds. Then water meter billing and electricity billing, for generating this bill and storing the consumer information, we need the database. These are all the applications of database. Next, DBMS users. DBMS users. What are all the DBMS users? There are 5 users: system analyst, application programmers, database administrator, end users, database designers. These are all the users. First, we can consider the end user. End user means who is using that system. Suppose one bill. The user means, if you are end user means people who require access to the database for querying, updating and generating reports. Whoever is using that system. Then the system analyst. Next we can consider the system analyst. The system analyst determines the requirement of end users. End users means whoever is using that system. According to the end user's requirement, only we are developing a software. In that case, the system analyst determines what are all the requirements for that user, and he decides develop the specifications to make these requirements. That is system analyst. That is, if you are in companies and all, if you are developing a project, there will be a system analyst. and application programmers. In software, according to the software, different part is developed by a different team. In that itself, different users are there. Here, then the second, application programmers. Application programmer is responsible for the programming. That is the Java, using the front end and all developed by. Front end means that forms, everything. HTML forms, Java programming, everything is done by this application programmers. Then database administrator. There will be a database administrator, that is DBA. This DBA is responsible for the security. Okay, for the authentication. Authentication means he is deciding, that DBA is deciding that table can access by what are all the persons can access that table. Whoever will get that access to one table, he is giving the permission. This DBA is giving the permission to access each data. Some teams can access some data, some persons can access some data, like that he is giving the permission. This DBA is giving the permission to access the data. That is the security. This security responsibility is under this DBA. Then end use, then database designers. This database designers is responsible for identifying the data to store in one project. What are all the data to be stored in the database? And this database designers are developing the designing the tables and all. What are all the data types for that one? What is the size of each data? What is the data type? And everything, that table form, everything designing by this database designers. Then these are all the DBMS users. Then first one, system analyst. He is the main person. System analyst is determine the requirement. What are all the requirement for this end user? According to the end user's requirement, he developed the specifications. Then the second one, application programmers. Application programmers is responsible for the programming, Java programming or C++ programming or anything. This application programmers are responsible for this programming part. Then DBA. DBA means DBA is responsible for the authentication access to the database. Means he is giving permissions to each person for the data. That is, security is under this person, DBA. End user means whoever is using that system. Then database designers is responsible for the design of the structure of the table and all. They are responsible for identifying the data to be stored in the database and choose appropriate structure for the database.